Hi, everybody. This is Frank McNally from Public Spend Forum. Really happy to be with you this afternoon for our webinar on the SBIR program. I'm chuckling because we had a bit of a false start just a second ago. I thought we were broadcasting and we weren't. It's 1 minute past 2 o'clock here on the East Coast. We like to give a few minutes for everybody to get on and get accustomed to their Zoom controls, which are really easy. If you hover your mouse at the bottom of your Zoom player, you'll see your audio controls. You'll see an opportunity to ask questions and to chat with us. We definitely encourage you to participate and engage throughout the session. We've got a really great panel, lots of institutional knowledge to bring you today, but we want to hear from you. So use the Q&A, use the chat. Myself and my colleague, Yanisa Perez de Leon, will be moderating that. But yeah, what we're talking about today is the SBIR program. Policy, contract strategies, and data for the small business and government. And this is being brought to you by Public Spend Forum. We're a market intelligence and procurement innovation platform, an ecosystem for public sector markets across the world. And what we want to do is ultimately envision and achieve open government markets for $10 trillion worth of goods and services, which we think we can achieve through connecting buyers and suppliers and making supplier intelligence and market research more achievable and executable in the public sector. So we have a full suite of tools and services to help us get there, including GovShop, which is our supplier intelligence and opportunity matching platform, GovSBIRs, which is our market research and procurement innovation training and services, and then GovLabs, which is a little thing we're cooking up on procurement innovation. So Raj, our co-founder, Raj Sharma, is on with us today. And Raj, I'm not sure if you want to say anything really quickly about any of these tool suites before we get started.
Great. No, thank you, Frank, and welcome everyone. I think you've got it covered. Excited to share some of our knowledge and information today.
Terrific. I mentioned we have an esteemed panel, and I'm going to be quiet and let them speak here in a little bit. Rather than me introducing each of you, why don't y'all take a second, introduce yourselves, just a bit of background, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ben McMartin, and he can kick us off. So why don't we start with you, Raj, since we just heard from you a second ago.
Great. He's really putting me on the spot today, as you can see. Hi, everyone. I'm Raj Sharma. I'm the CEO and founder of Public Spend Forum and leading the development of GovShop. Excited to share some of the work we've been doing, as well as how really we're pushing forward on our mission to create open government markets. Thanks.
Thanks, Raj. Dr. Michael Weatherly, we're glad to have you as well.
Hey, everybody. Mike Weatherly here, founder, SVP of C5BDI. Kind of sticking to what the main point of today's call is all about. We are a consulting company that helps both government and industry transition from phase 1 and 2 in the SBIR program to phase 3. I told Ben right before the call started that I had pretty major knee surgery yesterday, less than 24 hours ago, but I promised him and the team that I would hold off on all medicine so I wouldn't be loopy for the call. So you're gonna get the raw Mike Weatherly on the phone today, but just happy to be part of the call, and looking forward to sharing as much knowledge as we can about this great program that's definitely gone through some major changes in the last year or so, especially via the AFWorks program. So just excited to be on board today, and thank you very much.
Well, thanks, and we appreciate your sacrificial lucidity. All right, Ben, you can introduce and then take us off.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much, Frank, and thanks for everyone who's tuning in on this webcast today. So I have a unique perspective on the SBIR program. I grew up in the SBIR program as a contract specialist for the Army. And then after taking multiple different assignments, came back as a contracting officer, back to R&D contracting with the SBIR program, being the main contracting POC for my Army SBIR program, meaning my team of specialists were the folks that executed those SBIRs through all phases through the year. Then I went over to the program management side, where I was the acquisition manager for a lab, and then I was the customer for the SBIR program, helping define what the topics were, what research we were looking to get, and being the interface between the engineering community and the contracting community. And then most recently, after leaving the government, I have been bidding on SBIRs or advising on SBIRs. And I had a very unique experience a couple of days ago when Public Spend Forum was awarded a SBIR, and I signed my first SBIR on the left-hand side of the document. I've signed hundreds of times on the right-hand side of the document. So I've seen the SBIR program from a contracting perspective and program management perspective / engineering lab perspective from both sides for over a decade. And you know, when this topic came up, and specifically what we want to get to today, is really the journey of what the SBIR program, as a program, not a contracting strategy, but as a program, what the SBIR program brings to the Department of Defense and the other agencies who participate in the program, DoD being only one. What it brings as an opportunity to take research from an idea and have it all the way through the chain and into an end item, and actually have the government benefit from it. And when you look at SBIR from the vision of a holistic program, it can be a very good program for any agency who invests in it. From a contracting perspective, I can tell you there's a number of issues, both culturally and process issues, that seem to defeat some of the goodness of the program, which is really what I want to talk about today, which is phase 3 SBIRs. So today's topic is a little more advanced. This is not your basic, what is a SBIR, what is a sitter? You know, where do I find out where the opportunities are? We can certainly, anybody on this panel can certainly help you with that type of information. And I will tell you that as far as the SBIR program is concerned, the SBA's website for SBIR, simply SBIR.gov, nice and easy, is, in my opinion, the most comprehensive and the easiest to use of any of the government programs for small business. You can go on there and learn everything you need to know about SBIR, sitter, through video, policy, documents, articles, however you like to learn, and come out with a extremely comprehensive knowledge of what the program is supposed to be and what the objectives are and how it's supposed to work. Now, how that actually pans out when you have to go and engage an agency and bid for the work and execute the work and then try to transition into what our topic today, phase 3, of course, that's always a different story. Reality is always different than, you know, from what policy tells us. But that's why I reached out to Dr. Weatherly today, because his company sits in a unique position where they really take, you know, what SBIR is supposed to be and translate that for companies and government officials in, hey, here's the reality on the ground, but we can't lose track of the big policy perspective of, at the end of the day, SBIR is an investment in technology at an early stage with the hopes that it will grow up into a dual use commercial technology that, you know, for DoD's perspective, that DoD can directly benefit from. And when we keep the perspective of what the program is about, the contracting and the engineering and the program management and the logistics should fall into line. That's not always the reality. So that's really what today's topic is about. I would call it an intermediate level discussion. And you know, what prompted this discussion is what the efforts that we're taking a public spend forum through GovShop to display data to allow government and industry to find each other to benefit from the SBIR program. But as we'll explore today through this conversation, GovShop and our machine learning tool does a lot, and it can provide the basis for that understanding where companies are and where technology is. At the end of the day, people drive innovation, and you can't live without a company like Mike's company, who's really out there taking the technology to the government customer, helping them through the process, and ultimately getting some giant awards, which I hope we'll talk about today. So before we get into all of the issues with government contracting and the roadblocks and the different tools and tricks to get around those roadblocks, we're going to start this off today by passing it off to Raj Sharma, who is really going to walk us through, from a GovShop perspective, from a tool perspective, how both government and industry can benefit, but specifically to the government side, how government can leverage GovShop in its market research activities to identify potential SBIR contractors to bring through to final tech transition. And I'm excited about that. And I'll tell you, the audience for this, I'm a look at your Christmas presents before Christmas kind of guy. And I'm very excited about the audience that we have today, because we have a mix of folks who consult with small business companies, folks who consult on the small business program, technology providers. And then on the government side, we've got program management folks, folks from labs, contracting officials, attorneys, folks from the research community. So we got a real broad mix. And I know when we get to the Q&A, we'll have a lot of fun. I'm not afraid to poke fun at the government folks, and I'm not afraid to poke fun at the industry folks either. So we'll have fun both ways. But Raj, if you could take us through what we're doing at Public Spend Forum through GovShop to help the government side of the equation find new technologies and find them easily.
Sorry, I was having some technical difficulty here. Frank, if I could share my screen. I'll go ahead and show my screen then. Let me just do that. So I'll just caveat and start out by saying that I am probably the least knowledgeable person, not just among this panel, but probably the audience on SBIR program, and as well as a couple of other things I'm about to show you around drones, etc. So I caveat that, but my goal today is to just show you some of the functionality and data and how you can use the platform, GovShop, to find information easily. And from there, I think we'll get into, as Ben mentioned, a deeper discussion. So let me just show you here. Many of you may have seen GovShop before. I'll just do this. Will take less than 10 minutes. I've divided this into two parts. One is just to show you how you can find SBIR data on GovShop as it's currently architected. It is going to change in the coming weeks slightly to make it easier to navigate. And then second is I'll just show you results of really in a Google Sheet of some of our machine learning results when we do matching and how quickly we can match SBIR award winners to specific problem sets. So if I could start with the first one. So I'm on the GovShop interface here. As you may know, you can come into GovShop, you can search by keywords, you can search by commodity codes or categories, and you can search by contracts. What I'll show you just one first, before I jump into the example around drones, which I will use to show SBIR award winners. I want to show you one page that's quite comprehensive. It's our COVID page. I'll take less than 30 seconds, just because I thought it's a completely filled out page that might be helpful to see. So these landing pages are typically architected by market area. So let's say unmanned systems. And so within that, you've got all this information. One, what are the subcategories or areas that are being covered within that market? So in this case, we've got everything from personal protective equipment to ventilators, et cetera. We've also got contract vehicles that are related. So you can click on those and see which companies are on there. And then of course, suppliers. So I come back here. So as I scroll down this page, we've also for suppliers started to add opportunities related to the specific category that we may be looking, or market we may be looking at. So in this case, there's lots of opportunities, of course, and more are being populated. But the most important piece being in this case, suppliers, which is what we're discussing. So you'll see a supplier list. Let me just go back to the home page then. So the example I want to show you for a SBIR search is one around unmanned aerial vehicles. So I'm just going to type it in exactly that. You could type in different terms. So if I just type that in, you'll see here that I could click on all suppliers, and it will just show me companies that have these terms and related terms in them by markets or commodity codes in this case, or contract vehicles. I'm actually going to click on this specific link here for our landing page related to unmanned aerial vehicles. So when I come to this page, now again, you have a landing page that's not as complete as the other one, so we're filling a lot of these pages out as we go. But what you can see is if you quickly come down, you see there are over 1,000 plus companies that are mapped here against unmanned aerial vehicles. And you can read the definition, how we've defined it, and it's typically based on a lot of research. So when we come down, we can do a number of things on this page and click a report to see all the different cuts of data, how many non-traditional companies, how many SBIR award winners, et cetera. I'm going to actually skip that part just in the interest of time. I'm going to go directly to browse and filters. So this view right here allows you to use filters and narrow down your list of companies that are here. So I'm just clicking on that. So now I'm on the same set of companies, but they're presented in a different view with the filters on the left side. So you can see there's still 1,000 plus companies over here. So you can see some of the big names, Raytheon, Boeing, et cetera. But then you see some other companies as well. Elbit Systems, Kraus Hamdani. So let me just, and then there's filters here. Let me just click on one company first before I filter down to SBIR award winners. So let's say Kraus Hamdani Aerospace. So if I click in here, I just clicked on them because they just actually set a world record for continuous flight time. I'm probably not supposed to announce that yet till I put a press release out, but we just saw that. So I was personally excited to just say that. But Kraus Hamdani, you can see, is a autonomous persistent fixed-wing US company. You can scroll down this list here. You can see that this company provides certain vehicles. They're completing more of their profile. What are some of their past experience, etc. So I'm not going to spend too much time here. Let me go back to then the list. So what do you do to get to those SBIR award winners then? So if you go down to the filters, then there's a number of filters here. So if we scroll down, what you'll see is, and so you can use the filters for government set-aside programs, et cetera. But if we come down to government registration, this is a place where you can see companies that are registered with the federal government, for instance, with state, local, but also click on a filter to see emerging and non-traditional firms. Right below that are the SBIR award winners. So what we've done is we've taken and we're continuously updating all the data that comes out on SBIR award winners, and we add it here and we link it back to the companies that we have. So if I just click on this, you remember there were 1,000 plus companies. So let's just see how many companies are in here. So we only end up with 16 companies then under unmanned aerial vehicles, the way we've mapped it, that actually have SBIR award winners. Now you could have done a search based on specific terms and then clicked on this link, so you would have had the same result. So now you have 16 companies. We could click on another filter here. Let's say if we want to see how many of these are actually non-traditional. I haven't done this, so that's sometimes dangerous. I'm just clicking on this to see. Looks like only 2 of them actually end up as non-traditional. That means other ones have probably been in business longer, and we can talk about the definition of how we're using that does conform with some of the policy. So let me just go back to this. Now I'm going to click on physical sciences. I'm not clicking here because I will click on it, but go to my other tab where I have this open already. We've had a lot of traffic, so I'll admit the site is a little slow right now. But we're fixing that, so it's a good problem we're dealing with. So now we're inside of physical sciences. So if you want to go down, remember there were 16 total companies, right? So if we go down from here, if we scroll down, I already showed you a profile, so I'm going to go all the way down to past experience. Within past experience, you'll see all sorts of past experience. It might be contracts, it might be It also might be other challenges, awards that a company has won, so they can put in anything. What we have here are SBIR awards also for this company. You can see that they potentially have a lot of SBIR awards. Looks like hundreds of them, right? So what you can do here now is you can actually, we're putting a search function here, so you can actually search within this and find specific terms. But right now I'm just going to click on one just to show you the information that's there. So once you click in here, you can see the specific award title for and the date, who awarded it, some of the other pertinent information, description, all of the things you typically find on the SBIR site, but it's right within the supplier profile, and you can, it's tagged over here. So you can go back to the list that we were at. And Ben and Frank or anyone, please let me know if you want me to do anything else that besides what I'm showing here. What you can do really quickly is just select all of these companies, put them on a list. I'm not going to go through all of that in the interest of time. You can select them. You can go through this, add it to a list, print out the list, do all of those things if you like. So that basically tells you a simple way to navigate and find SBIR data. I'm going to pause here for a second to see if any of our panel members want me to do anything else or show you anything before I show you just a very quick machine learning result. Ben or Frank or Michael?
So Raj, no, I think this presents the use case for our government friends. You know, I think part of what we need to explain up front is that, you know, GovShop is a free for government, free for industry market tool where industry and government can find each other. You know, the government uses this for market research to identify suppliers. You know, the next step to that is not just to identify suppliers for UAS, it's to identify suppliers that have done research, be able to access and identify what that research is, and be able to identify contracting tools where you can readily engage that company. And so, you know, in the scheme of leveraging SBIR and SBIR Phase 3, SBIR Phase 3, the competition is satisfied at the Phase 1, Phase 2 level. And therefore, you know, the government can go direct to a company to complete that research under Phase 3 under sole source tool. This is a tool that folks should be identifying. Really, it's no different than if you're looking at a certain company and you identified they had a GSA schedule or they had an IDIQ in place. It's another contracting tool that the government should be aware of. That allows you to solve the contracting problem and complete the research and development and actually get that thing inserted. Just to get some perspective back on why we're talking GovShop here in the SBIR perspective, from the SBIR Phase 3 perspective, there are going to be thousands, hundreds of thousands of individual actions this year, next year, and for the foreseeable future for new research. And during the market research phase, we need those government procurement experts to be finding existing tools.
Great. Ben, are you still there?
I am. I'm looking at these questions. We're getting some good questions.
Okay. While you do that, maybe I can just mention one thing that we will have a filter soon that allows you to filter by Phase 1, 2, or 3 as well. So you can this way filter down. And I think this is where, you know, seeing the companies and what Michael will speak about in a little bit. Seeing the Phase 2, Phase 1 award winners, and then I think guiding some of these companies, that's where there's a lot of value that's missing right now, right? And I'm excited to learn from Michael and team about how we do that and how that can be done so we can move these companies and transition them from, you know, Phase 1 or 2, really to start to commercialize the solutions that we've already invested in.
Yeah.
Let me just do, Ben, if I could just do one thing really quick. Again, I'll take less than 2 minutes on this. So also one of the other things we've set up is in the background, we're actually doing fine-tuning our machine learning algorithms. Those aren't on the front end yet, but those are something we can deploy if somebody asks us to. So here's one where we looked at this AFWERX challenge for persistent ISR. And there's a number of kind of requirements here. Again, in the interest of time, I'm not going to get into detail, and I'm happy to talk to you about this in more length. But what we did then is we took basically the key terminology from this, plus a lot of the other ontology that we've been building around ISR, and then we applied it through our machine learning tool to get a match. And we will be able to show you a full demo of putting the information in and how you get these results back out. But I just wanted to show you, this was done in a matter of hours, where we were able to very quickly fine-tune our results and get only 15 results back. So a fine-tuned list based on the requirements and a very limited set of information that was provided here within this challenge, and get back what previous SBIR award winners actually had relevant awards. So again, in the interest of time, I am not going to go into detail right now, but we thought about doing a webinar just on this as we kind of put the tool out for this. But happy to discuss this at length. We're really excited about this part because it allows you to quickly get to a narrower set and see where there might be companies that you can actually work with.
All right, so we talked about the data, we talked about the tools. There's a number of questions. I'll hit them just down the line real quick, but I want to get Mike's input here because really, we know, I know, and Mike definitely knows that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And so, you know, even with the ability to leverage phase 3 and the fact that it's a government investment going forward, there is still hesitance. There's still ignorance on what the law and the policy is. And there are a number of issues of technology making it from phase 2 into, and I don't want to say just making it into phase 3, because phase 3 is not the objective. Technology transition and technology insertion are the objective. So just to run down the questions here real quick that we got, mostly specific to GovShop. GovShop is maintained, it's owned by Public Spend Forum. There is a subscription model, but it's always free for government, and there is a free base package for industry partners as well. So if you're an industry partner, claim your free profile, build it out, and start getting hits on that government market research. If you're on the government side, sign up for a free government account, start using it for market research today. Our biggest users are Air Force and Army, but we have buyers from all the federal agencies, from state and local government, international partners like NATO as well. So it's free. Get in there and use it. If you want a government reference on how you can get the most out of it, we'll steer you to one of our Air Force customers. They seem to get the most value out of it. And then, are we intending to include active phase 3? Absolutely. Phase 3s can be IDIQs and should be IDIQs and should be open for ordering across other agencies. The 2018 NDAA, I believe, maybe the 19 NDAA or 17, now I'm all over the place, specifically stated that, hey, DOD, heads up, when you do these SBIR phase 3s, do them as IDIQs and leave them open defense-wide so that you're not duplicating all these contracts. So yes, we will absolutely be identifying phase 3s. And then, could we set up a webinar on technical approach and methods GovShop uses for its tool? Of course, we would love to do that. If people really want to geek out on the machine learning aspect and everything they can get out of the data pool that we've developed, which is specific to public procurement, state, local, federal, international, we would love to. And so I think that gets us back to the SBIR specific questions. And the last couple questions are SBIR specific. and they're gonna lead us right into Mike, which I love, because we're talking about delays. How do I get past those big delays in government contracting? How can I determine what other agencies are buying what research, and how can I piggyback off of that? And Mike, the fact that folks are asking those two questions lets me know that you're going to have a job for a long, long time.
True. For sure. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good questions there. Which one did you want me to start with?
You know, let's not dive into the delays, although that's, you know, one of my big pet peeves, and I do have some ideas there. Let's just talk about, you know, what does C5 BDI do, and how are you helping vendors related to the SBIR program at any phase, or give us the whole rundown.
Okay, at a real high level, and I'll try to keep it mainly focused on the SBIR program. We're a consulting company. We're a small business consulting company, and so we sit between government and industry. We are not a contractor. We take $0 from the federal government in that sense. So, you know, my company has never won an SBIR. What we do is, you know, mainly when we first started out from a SBIR perspective, we were helping a lot of these companies that had phase 1s and phase 2s transition to phase 3. And the question always there, just to kind of get to that, is like, well, how do you make that happen? Well, the easy answer is you have to have a government customer who has a requirement for what you have and has funding, period. Because, you know, there's been lots of things that have happened over the last decade or so to try to help with tech transition. For example, we have the Rapid Innovation Fund, the RIF program. There's all these like phase 2 enhancements and all these types of programs. There's even funding that comes from the government that goes directly to companies to hire consulting companies to help them with tech transition. And so, in our opinion, a lot of those things just haven't worked. I mean, the RIF program has, you know, been canceled and hasn't been funded for the last year, now going on maybe 2 years. And, you know, a lot of these tech transition companies that get paid out of, quote, SBIR dollars, oftentimes takes from the SBIR program itself, and there's not a lot of success there. And so really what we do is we come in and we help both sides of the equation. And so it's in our best interest to help these small business companies that have already won an SBIR transition their technology to phase 3. And more importantly, from a government perspective, we serve as a tech scout for the government, mainly in the DoD, but across US Gov wide, where SBIR program is ineffective. And so we, you know, help those companies transition towards the phase 3. And so just for like quick data points, in the last year and a half, we've helped industry and government connect on over 30 phase 3s, which is just over about $500 million. And we've got about 20 or so more that are getting ready to be awarded here before the end of the fiscal year. And that's totaling about $300 and something million. And so we've definitely got the recipe down. I mentioned AFWorks at the beginning of the call. One of the things that we like about AFWorks is it sped up the process. And so, you know, we like the fact that AFWorks is bringing in these high TRL technologies, and in often cases, you know, the warfighter wants to take it right away and start using it instantly. And so in most cases, not just with AFWorks, I mean, just across the entire SBIR program, but definitely more with AFWorks, we've actually had phase 3s awarded before the phase 2s, and that's usually like a head scratcher for the companies and even on the government side, because you know, everybody thinks you got to follow phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and you really don't, because if you already have a high TRL solution, you actually go directly to phase 3. And so we help, again, both government and industry make that connection, walk through all it's, you know, the hard part about the SBIR program, especially phase 3s, even with some of these questions that are getting asked is, you know, why does it take so long? There's so many variables that go into the equation, and everybody thinks there's a one-size-fits-all solution for where you go to cut the contract and or what type of funding, but there's really not. And so, I mean, I always joke around all the time with our team and the folks we talk to, like one of the reasons that we've been so successful as Clinty is because we've literally run into a bunch of no's and walls, and we continuously just go through those walls, around those walls, over and over until we get our yes. And so often that means failing a lot, but we fail fast. And so, you know, we don't go down the road thinking this is just going to be one all be all solution with the SBIR program phase 3. We cut SBIRs through OTs. I mean, we get super creative. There's other kinds of contract strategies that you can use from a perspective to speed up the process. And so at a real high level, when it comes to SBIR program, that's what my company does. We help, both industry and government connect at the end of the day, help the small business get this revenue coming in to help their technology meet whatever the warfighter need is, and then more importantly, help the warfighter get the technology they need today and not tomorrow.
Yeah, that's a great rundown, and you tapped on a couple issues that I think we can get to on these questions that have come in. So I don't want to belabor the point, pun intended, but it takes a long time to get on award with these SBIRs. And I know it doesn't feel like that with some of the rapid innovation that's out there and some of the groups that have found faster ways to do it. But I can tell you, I won't tell you what my lead times were of my team because they're embarrassing and I won't talk about them. But let me tell you, if you're a small business and you couldn't hang out for 8 months, you probably didn't do a lot of business with me because we weren't very efficient in our program. And that went on for a number of years. And then groups like AFWERX came around and they solved part of the problem. And the part of the problem they did is they said, hey, these things can't hang out there that long because honestly, small businesses and startups are going to come in and they're willing to play for a couple months, but they can't hang around and wait for 6 months to find out if they're going to get $100,000, right? I mean, it's just not realistic to hang out, put in the work, do the back and forth just to find out if you're going to get 100,000 and then start writing the proposal to try to get to phase 2 immediately after. What I really like about what AFWERX did is they took the problem and they said, we can assembly line this, right? And being from Michigan, I appreciate everybody who assembly lines anything. They said, hey, we can assembly line this. We can do strike teams. We can put them in a room and slide pizza under the door and say, don't come out until you knock out 200 of these things. And we can do them really, really fast. And so I appreciate half of that. And the piece that I appreciated is, the typical types of delays that you see in government contracting where you just don't have time or SBIR is only $100,000, but I've got $100 million source selection I'm working on. What's going to get priority? AFWERX attacked that problem, and I think they did a good job of that. Here's the piece that I don't think is as good. That when you look at the AFWERX process or any of the other rapid processes, they basically took everything that they required and they truncated it, meaning, hey, still do 30 documents, but do them faster, and we'll throw tons of bodies at them. I think there's definitely some innovation that still needs to be done. And by the way, this isn't a knock on AFWERX because I bet they will innovate and become better and better, and they continue to. There needs to be a look at, hey, instead of doing 47 documents faster, we need to find a way to do 20 documents. Right? How do we get to 20 documents? And I'm exaggerating. I don't think it's 20. I think it's 19 currently. But there has to be a way to go faster. So when you're helping folks out and you're looking across all the different SBIR programs, are you seeing any groups out there that are finding ways to reduce the burden of what's required in terms of process and documents?
Yeah, good question. I mean, from an industry perspective, on the industry, like the proposal goes, yeah, absolutely. AFWERX has done that. You got the 5-page white paper and the 15 PowerPoint slide deck, which is completely different from what the traditional, SBIR has always been since 1982. On the contracting side, however, on the government side, I feel like the paperwork is still cumbersome. I mean, I love AFWERX to death. I'm not going to beat those guys up, but at the same time too, like, it's no big secret that the phase 1s all get awarded pretty quickly, but the phase 2s are, lagging behind a little bit. And COVID's thrown a curveball into that. And there's, it went from a little bit of attention when this AFWERX joint call or AFWERX open call started, in 18.2.3. And now, they're getting like thousands of proposals. So it's a lot to go to, but at the same time too, it's kind of like building the plane on the way down. And one of the things where there definitely is room for improvement is in the phase 3. And that's, that's one thing that AFWERX first set out to solve, is because the SBIR program historically has not done a good job of transitioning to phase 3, period. I mean, I always, I'm pinging on it all the time with all the government R&D. It's $3 billion a year that goes into this program. And the whole point of it is phase 3. And that oftentimes gets, forgotten. And it's funny, Raj, when you were poking around, I'm not going to name any companies, but a couple of the companies you named there, they make a mint off this R&D. They're called SBIR mills in industry, and, they don't transition. They just don't. I'm really curious to see how you guys get your data for the phase threes, because a lot of those companies maintain that data by themselves. They don't have to publicly report it, and it's really hard to get that type of data. So that'll be interesting to see. But just going back to AFWERX real quick, for example, with the phase three. So they've changed and evolved almost every single round, where there was like matching funds for VC. And then with the phase threes, they were going to try to have where customers could fund and get matching funds and put that additional funds on the phase two. But, this gets down to like the color of the money. And this is more of like the 401 part of the discussion, but you can't put omen funding on a phase two with R&D funds. That's just illegal and against the law. But hey, AFWERX, came up with a workaround, a solution. They actually, a couple of rounds ago, released the phase one on a CSO instead of a BAA. And so the rest of the DoD, market server place was still doing everything on a BAA, but by moving over to a CSO, they allowed themselves to then award other types of funding on a phase two. This is like groundbreaking, never been done before. And it was like, done almost overnight with what the Air Force folks did. But, I always joke around. I say this all the time. For, Army, and this is mainly not just with SBIR, but just in general, for Navy contracts, we take the Navy to the Army. For Army contracts, we take the Army to the Air Force. And for Air Force contracts, we take them to GSA. So nobody can ever help their own government customer do a contract, especially in the phase three space. And so when it comes to, who does it well, we're always going over to the brother or the sister to help out there with the contracting action. GSA has done an awesome job. They've got the MOUA that they've signed with the Air Force. So especially on AFWERX alone, they're doing a lot of these phase threes. But unfortunately, like everybody on the government side, they're understaffed and, overwhelmed with all these requirements. And so, that gets into some of the delays and some of the things on questions that are being asked right now.
Yeah. And man, I haven't been on a webinar in a while where the questions just continuously pour in like this one. So let's see if we can keep up. But I'm gonna lay a little credence to what you just said there, Mike. Definitely on one of our last phase threes before I left Army and came to Public Spend Forum, we begged the Air Force to do it, and then the Air Force turned around and asked GSA if they could do it. So sounds like your chain is exactly in line. Nobody wants to use their own contracting folks. They're always looking for where they can get the most efficient. And part of that, though, in my experience, part of that has to do with an understanding of what phase three is about. And I'm going to tie it right back to the very beginning of this webinar, which is the SBIR program is a government investment in technology program. The government invests in phase one. It invests in phase two. It is hoping that it will invest in phase three and then transition the technology into a system. There is a definite misunderstanding throughout the government, especially in DoD, of what phase three is. Phase three, when you go to phase three and you don't have SBIR dollars anymore, and you have a program management customer and you have a new contracting team, and you go to them and you say, "Hey, new contracting team, I would love to spend some money on this technology. It's a phase three. I want to finally get the return on my investment." And it's usually a new contracting team that says, "Well, this is a contract. I've been trained that I need to compete a new contract, and we're going to run this through the typical contracting mill." These are not competitive procurements. This is the final development of an investment the government's made. And to your point, $3 billion goes in, and what comes out? Not much comes out because there's some broken pieces in the middle.
Hey, Ben, if I could just chime in. I think, Mike, to your point earlier as well, I think if this is really ultimately about, investing in R&D, and I think the ultimate goal obviously is commercializing that, right? Or scaling that. And I think, the example you mentioned where, it actually, I'm interested in doing this analysis now, seeing, you know, are there companies that are just, you know, SBIR format farmhouses, right? They just win a lot of phase ones, but are they actually able to move things along, right? I think that's an important thing. I know, Ben, you've talked about, and others have talked about, is what are we doing with this, right? Are we ultimately moving kind of this technology so it can be scaled and deployed, right? The deployment is the most important part of it. So I think the work you're doing is, I think, so crucial, and that ultimately has to be the measure of success of SBIR, right? Is how much technology are we at the end of the day deploying at scale?
Yeah, and
Yeah, I mean,
the
go
piece
ahead.
I'm going to jump all over Mike because this is what he's about to say, and I'm going to steal it. The piece that's missing from name it, SBIR, RIF, OTA. The piece that's missing is that there's not a measurement of the only thing that matters, which is return on investment. There's a measure in how many non-traditionals get it. There's a measure in how fast the awards are made. There's a measure on how many of your dollars are obligated in the first year of your 2-year money. There are a million ways that it's measured. Some of them are just measured to be measured. Some of them are measured as a proxy for, well, if we hit this metric, then we can allege that we're meeting the intent of the program. But at the end of the day, if you're a lab or a program management office or anybody investing in SBIR, if that technology doesn't make it into a system, then you didn't get a return on investment. That's not always your fault. Sometimes technology doesn't pan out. But if the technology does pan out and it doesn't make it to your system, then that's a fail. It doesn't matter that all your money was spent on time and that you had quick awards and everybody got a contract in a week. You didn't transition. This is an investment program. If you don't transition, it's a waste of the program. Did I step on you, Mike, or did you have something way smarter to say?
No, you hit on a couple points I was going to make, and I'm just looking at a couple of the questions here. Just there's a couple more points I wanted to make. There's a question about smalls collaborating with the customer on phase 1s and 2s to pick up a phase 3 sponsor. Like, that's a really good question. The problem is in the traditional space, oftentimes the phase 1s and 2s are with the guys and gals in the labs, and they're not, meeting every day with the folks out there in the field. And so that's a little bit of a disconnect with the traditional program, which is what AFWorks tried to fix with the whole, phase 1, it's a marketing budget. You're going out there trying to find your customer that's going to work with you in phase 2. And so that puts the onus on the company to go find their sponsor. And that's often, that's a hard thing to do. And so that's one thing that we help out with. Another thing is just, what I mentioned, going and getting to know a lot. What we've done is, we're trying to solve a lot of problems in the government, and there's a lot to be solved. But, one of the things is government wants to work with, these international companies. And so can an international company be a prime on a small business on an SBIR? No, the answer is no, you can't do that. Okay, well, let's scratch our brains and see if we can find a better way. Can we partner up an international company that's obviously from a friendly country to be a subcontractor to a small business? Oh, yeah, that's fine. That's totally legal. Okay, well, we've got tons of government customers that want to work with companies from Germany and Lithuania and Australia, and the list goes on and on and on. And so what we do is we help play matchmaker. And so we match up small businesses that have pretty unique services and or technology that complements another technology from an international provider, and then put the two together. Boom, you've got a solution. And through the SBIR program, we have one German company that we've worked with in the past. They've won 5 contracts now with the DoD, SOCOM, Army, Air Force, and Navy, and 2 with the Air Force. And so that's just, keep going through the nose until you get your yes. And there's like a little, trick of the trade, what makes us unique. And here's like a tip for everybody out there from an industry perspective is, what makes us unique from a business perspective from our company, our consulting company, C5BDI, is we don't have anything to sell. We don't, when these small businesses, they go meet with government customers, they're trying to sell whatever product and or service technology that they have. And so, if government customers are, super busy, they've only got so much time in the day. And so what we do is we meet with these government customers. We're not there to pitch them on any one company or thing. We're just saying, tell us what your requirements are. Tell us what your capability gaps are. We already know the mission, and we wouldn't be in there talking to them. Go out to the industry, right? Companies to meet the market. And oftentimes it's not just one company. It's a program that comes together. the government solution, and that's why we've had such great success. Just AFWorks alone, we've helped over 150 companies win a phase one in just the last year and a half. And so that comes just from that unique position of being the person in the middle and talking to both sides. And there's just not a lot of companies out there like that. There's a couple that have up now, and that's great because the government's a big place and there's a lot of work to be done. But that's just one kind of trick. The trick is you got to be able to collaborate and not think that you can do everything. The small businesses and even the big businesses, they think they can do it all, and it really does. It's a team sport with government contracting for sure, and that's very different from the way it's traditionally been done.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are so many questions on this that I know we're going to have to do, and I'm going to invite you back, Mike, and we're going to have to do a second one of these. And I think I want to title it "All the Things That You Can Do with SBIR That People Say You Can't." Because, one of the things I wanted to get to on this, and we're just not going to get to it, is there is a lack of training and information in the contracting community on what's allowable with SBIR Phase 3. And I've run into it on the government side. I've run into it on the industry side. And there's such a lack of information that it ends up being a real high burden to get to phase 3. Honestly, I don't know that I would go to phase 3 without hiring a company like C5BDI to help me, because it's doing the government's work so that they understand how the program works for them. I've had to direct government contracting folks to the SBA site and ask them to read the policies so that they understand how to do it. Very hard to do. Usually they won't. And then you spend your time explaining to them, and hopefully I'll answer a couple of the questions here, that with phase 3, you can phase 3 off of any SBIR. You can go direct to 1 to 3, like you said. You can go 1, 2, and then 3. It can be a SBIR that you did 10 years ago. You can do 50 phase 3s off of your phase 1 with 50 different customers if you want. There's really no limit on how to leverage phase 3 because think of this. It is not contracting. It's not getting around contracting. It is getting a return on the investment that the government made through a competition, the SBIR competition. Go back to your point, Mike. It is tough for a small business to come in phase 1, phase 2. Phase 1, phase 2, it's a paper writing competition, but phase 3 is networking. Phase 3 is you need a customer that has their own money to say, I want to invest in your technology. And so commercializing your technology and getting the word out of your technology is your job in phase 1 and phase 2. And the contracting folks aren't going to help you with that. They might be a roadblock. I'll give everyone one terrible story about Ben McMartin to help us carry this webinar out. Around 2009, 2010, I was a contract specialist for research and development for the Army. And as good as I thought I was at contracting, I certainly wasn't good at understanding what the purpose of the SBIR program was. And I distinctly remember a contractor had proposed in their phase 1 that they wanted to do a video of we're going back, right? 2009, contractor says, hey, one of the milestones in my SBIR phase 1 is I want the government to pay me to make this video, a commercialization video it was called, to tell people about my product. And I remember going back to the vendor and saying, you got to remove this scope. There's no way I'm paying for you to commercialize your product. I'm buying research and development from you. So I'm not paying for you to make this video, right? Fast forward 10 years. All right. Ben learned something about research and development in the SBIR program. And, I switched sides. I go over to the program management side. I'm supporting the lab. And I distinctly remember going to my contracting person and saying, I'm sick of reports. I want every SBIR we do to have a commercialization video as a deliverable in it from now on, right? So there is an education need from the contracting community to understand what the purpose of SBIR is. I am guilty of not knowing it and being poor at executing it. It took me over a decade to learn it. But I would love to get more communication out there to the contracting community on exactly what the program's about and contracting from a program perspective. Hey, I'm assisting in the contract function to help us get a return on our investment. I'm not just executing a contract. So I'll leave you guys with that failure story, Ben's failure stories. I'll start a blog called Ben's Failures. But let's go ahead and get some closing thoughts. And why don't we start with Mike?
Yeah, I mean, again, you know, when I knew this was only going to be an hour today, I mean, there's some really good questions up here. You know, the phase 3 IDIQ question, there's just so many good questions here that I could talk through all day. But yeah, again, we, you know, from a marketing perspective, we obviously bill ourselves as a consulting and business development company, but at the end of the day, we're an education company. I mean, that's what we do, because 99% of what we do is educate both government and industry. And, you know, just for like an example, there are local contract shops that do want to do phase 3 SBIRs, but they have no clue how to do it, or they're scared because they don't want to get in trouble. And so, you know, there's been instances where we've come in and said, you know, here's the policy, here's all the laws, here's the memos from all the whatever agency, the secretary. Here's some references and some government customers you can go talk to. Here's some documents. We can help you do all these things. And some of those customers have stepped up to the plate and knocked it out of the park and done a phase 3. You know, again, I think I said, you know, and if I didn't say this earlier, but, you know, just of those 30 that we've done in the last year and a half or so, the smallest one was just under $1 million and the biggest one was for $150 million. And that was just a couple of weeks ago. I mean, there's all these great ways, and it's not just about the technology transition. It's also a very unique contracting strategy, which is like a whole nother call about, you know, how you can use this from a contract strategy perspective to get funding on contract quicker. And I know that's one of the things that we were talking to you about, Ben, back in the day when we came up and saw you and you were still on the government side. But yeah, I mean, again, thanks for having me on the call. I know we're kind of at the time here, and again, my name is Mike Weatherly, C5BDI. If you have any questions, you can get us on the website, super easy, c5bdi.com. My email is mweatherly, just like it sounds, at c5bdi.com. And so, Raj, Ben, Frank, really appreciate you guys including me today, and looking forward to taking part in more conversations if you decide to have me back. So really appreciate it.
So, Mike, we will not be having you back because I thought we were going to make it through the whole call without you calling me out on that last bit. Just so the rest of the attendees know, Mike and his company did a fantastic job of helping us understand what all the law, policy, templates, references, everything for the Army on a technology that we really wanted to get to, and we could not get it done. We could not get it done. And thanks for rubbing it in, Mike. I appreciate it.
And so just for my last nickel, just so everybody knows, we taken that industry person. They had a DARPA SBIR, and we went and got a phase 3 cut through the Navy. And so now several folks in the Navy are using that contract. But if anyone wants to use it, Ben, tell them they can use it as well.
All right. Well, it's the one that got away for the Army. Unfortunately, it was only process and lack of vision that got rid of it. Everything in the law lined up. Everything in the return on investment lined up. We just couldn't get past contracting on that one. So Raj, why don't you give us your so longs or alibis, and let's close this out.
Well, one thing I was going to mention to Mike is that you didn't know Ben was so sensitive. Now you do. Well, I think this is such an amazing topic, and one that we need to continue digging into, because the government's making a lot of investments, right? And which is great to see, and bringing in more and more companies. I think if we can all work together to really make sure that we can further kind of scale that technology, further commercialize it within the government, outside of government, I think that has huge benefit. So I'm just excited about that as a citizen, as, you know, not even from a GovShop or Public Spend Forum standpoint, just what kind of exciting potential that holds. I'll leave it at that.
All right, Frank. So thanks for everyone for coming. Frank, you want to take us out and look for the follow-up, which I think we're calling, you know, everything that people tell you you can't do with SBIR Phase 3 that you can by Mike Weatherly.
Give me the title of my book. I will give you credit. Thanks, Ben.
Hey, thanks a lot to the panel. We appreciate it. Attendees, thanks for being so active and engaged. We appreciate the questions. We'll see if we can answer a lot of these that kind of came through. Maybe we'll put some content together around these questions since they're all really good topics. But thanks, everyone. This is Public Spend Forum signing out for the afternoon, and we'll see you next time.